All right, number 22, we want to find the graph that has a vertical displacement of tangent. Tangent's parent graph is increasing wiggles, and when we look at graph B, that's the only graph that has increasing wiggle shapes. And we can see that the midline, the center of that wiggle, is here at -2. So the vertical displacement is down 2 units. So number 22 is graph B. Okay, next we want to find the graph with a phase shift of the secant function. And secant is alternating U shapes. The parent graph of secant is shown here in Desmos, and we can see the parent graph has its y-intercept here at 0, 1 with an upward facing U. When we look at this graph, graph F, we have an upward facing U, but the y-intercept, instead of being at 0, 1, right, we can see this got shifted, that corresponding point, over to the left. So the phase shift of secant would be graph F. Okay, 24 is looking for an amplitude change in sine. The parent graph of sine goes through 0, 0, and it's a wave shape. So in graph E, we have the shape of the sine function. The parent graph of sine, when we look back at Desmos, has a distance from the midline to its maximum of 1. So the A is 1. When we compare that to graph E, we can see that instead of having a maximum of 1, this has a maximum of 4. And that is the change in amplitude. It's a vertical stretch of 4 units. So the graph E corresponds to the amplitude change in sine. 25 is looking for a vertical stretch or shrink of the cotangent function. Cotangent is decreasing wiggles. So in D, we see the decreasing wiggles. And notice that they're wider here in the middle than the tangent wiggles, which did not have any vertical stretch or shrink. So the stretch or shrink here, we can see, since it got wider in the middle, is actually a shrink. It's compressing towards the x-axis. So those y values have shrunk down closer to the midline. So that would be graph D for number 25. 26 is a reflection of cosine. The parent graph of cosine is the one that makes the cozy hammock shape. It has a y-intercept of 0, 1. Okay, so here's our parent graph of cosine. It starts up here at its maximum and then dips down to its minimum and back up again. If I make a reflection in the x-axis, that's a negative in the front, that flips the hammock upside down. So it starts down, comes up to its max, and then back down again. And that corresponds to graph C. You can see the y-intercept here at -1, then up and back down. So C is a reflection of the cosine graph. And then 27, a period change in cosecant. So the graph of cosecant has a period of 2 pi. And we can see we have an upward and a downward facing U between 0 and 2 pi. When I look at the graphs A, I've got the same shape that I need, but between 0 and 2 pi, I have 1, 2, 3 of those cycles. So the graph A would be a period change because of the horizontal shrink. To see what that would look like on our parent graph, we can change the b value. We wanted to fit 3 full cycles between 0 and 2 pi instead of 1. So we'll put a 3 as the b. And now we can see that between 0 and 2 pi, I can fit 3 full cycles.